Welcome to the SQL interview preparation session by Intellipaat. If you are already here, I can definitely assume that you are aware of how important SQL is. I mean, you take any big names like Netflix, Meta, Uber, Google, or Microsoft. All of them put SQL to use in some way or other. And the list doesn't stop at the names of these companies. It just goes on and on. In fact, I would go ahead and say it doesn't matter what kind of role you are in. You need to have a practical knowledge of SQL. Whether you are a Python developer, tester, web developer, or software developer, you need to know how to connect a database to your product, right? And if you are a data professional, SQL is an absolute must-have for you to communicate with databases, irrespective of whether you are a data analyst, data engineer, or data scientist. There is an absolute necessity for you to have a good grasp over SQL. And if you're going to attend the interview for the job roles that I just mentioned, you can expect minimum 15 to 20% of interview questions to revolve around the concepts of SQL. So keeping that in mind, we have prepared this particular video wherein we are going to discuss some of the most commonly asked SQL interview questions in the interviews. The questions that we have covered in this particular video are endorsed by our 3,100 plus hiring partners that are associated with us at Intellipaat. So make sure that you're keeping your notebooks ready to note down all the important pointers and questions discussed in this video. Having said that, let me transfer further proceedings to our industry expert for him to take us through some of the most commonly asked SQL interview questions.
Now let's start off by having a glance at the salary trends of SQL. So this graph tells us that the salary of SQL developers has been steadily increasing year by year. And as of 2019, the median salary of a SQL developer stands at around $85,000. So there is a very high demand for professionals with knowledge in SQL. Now that we've looked at the demand of SQL, let's start with the first question. So what exactly is SQL? So this is a very basic question. So to answer this, SQL stands for the Structured Query Language. And according to ANSI, it is a standard query language for relational database management systems, which is used for maintaining the relational database and also to perform different operations of data manipulation on different types of data. So SQL is widely used language for maintaining relational database, and in the year 1986, SQL became the standard of American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. So basically it is a database language which is used for creation and deletion of databases, and it can be used to fetch and modify rows from the table and also multiple other things. So let's head on to the next question. So we are supposed to explain the different types of SQL commands. So the SQL commands can be divided into 4 categories. So we've got data query language, data definition language, data manipulation language, and data control language. So the data query language comprises of just one command, select, though it can be accompanied with many clauses to compose queries on a database. Then we have the data definition language. So DDL is that part of SQL which defines the data structure of the database in the initial stage when the database is about to be created. So it is mainly used to create and restructure the database objects. So you can see commands like create table, alt table, and drop table in DDL. And after that we have the data manipulation language. So DML is used to manipulate the already existing data in the database. That is, it helps the user to retrieve and manipulate the data. And it is used to perform operations like inserting data into the database through the insert command, updating data in the database through the update command, and deleting data from the database through the delete command. And finally, we have the data control language, which is used to control access to the data in the database. So these DCL commands are normally used to create objects related to user access and also to control the distribution of privileges among users. And you see commands such as grant and revoke in DCL. Right, so this is the next question. So what exactly are constraints? And we are supposed to explain about the default and the unique constraint. So constraints are basically used to specify some sort of rules on the data and limit the type of data that can go into a table. Alright, so let's understand about default constraint. So the default constraint is used to provide a default value for a column. So the default value will be added to all the new records if no other value is specified. For example, if we assign the default constraint to this eSalary column, and set the default value to be equal to 85,000, then all the entries of this column will have a default value of 85,000 if no other value is assigned during the insertion. So similarly, we can also assign a default value of analytics to this EDEPT column. Right. So now we'll go to SQL Server and we'll work with the default constraint. Now I'll start off by creating a new table and I'll add the default constraint to one of those columns. So I'll create a new table and I'll name this table as stu1. So the syntax would be create table stu1, and this would comprise of these columns. So there would be SID, which basically stands for the student ID, and the data type of this column would be integer. After this, there is SName, which stands for student name, and the data type would be varchar, and the length of the string, or the maximum length of the string, would be 20. And then I'll finally have the marks scored by the student, which would be S marks, and this would be of integer type. Now after this, I will give in the default constraint and I will set the default value to be equal to 50. Right, so I have successfully created this table. Now let me have a glance at this table first. So select star from stu1. So this is our table, which is empty as of now. Now what I'll do is I will go ahead and insert some values into the table. So I'll type in insert into stu1 and then I'll give in the name of the columns. So this needs to be insert. So the name of the first column is SID and then I've got SName. Now I'll type in values and give in the values for these two columns. So let's say the first ID is 1 and the name of the student is Sam. Now I'll click on execute. Now let me have a glance at this modified table now. Select star from stu1. So now we see that we have this default value of 50 in this S marks column, and this is because we had assigned the default constraint to this column. Now similarly, let me add two more records into this table. So insert into stu1 SID SName. I'll give in values. So it'd be 2 and the name of the second student is Bob. Right, so I've also added the second record. Now let me add in the third record. So the student ID is 3 and the name of the student is Matt. Right, so now I have 3 records in this table. Select star from stu1. So these are the 2 new records and the default value is 50 for these 2 new records. So this is how we can work with the default constraint. Now comes the unique constraint. So the unique constraint ensures that all the values in a column are different. For example, if we assign the unique constraint to this ename column, then every entry in this column should have a unique value. So here we see that all the names of the employees are different. Now again, let's go to SQL Server and work with a unique constraint. So again, I'll create a new table and add the unique constraint to one of the columns. Create table, and this time the name of the table would be stu2. Again, there would be the ID, and this is of integer type. Now I would be assigning the unique constraint to this SID column, and there would be a second column which is basically the student name, and this is of varchar type. Again, the length of the string would be 20. Right. Now let me have a glance at this table again. So select star from stu2. So this is our new table which is empty as of now. Now let me go ahead and add values into this. So insert into stu2 values. I'll add in the first record. So 1, which would be the student ID. Name of the student is Julia. Now let me look at this table. Select star from stu2. Right, so we have successfully inserted this record. Now let me add a new record. So insert into stu2 values. Now what I'll do is I will again give the ID of the student to be 1 and the name of the student to be Matt, and let's see what happens. So this time we get a message or a warning message, and this states that violation of unique key constraint, and we cannot insert duplicate key in object dbo.stu2. And that is because we had given the unique constraint to this SID column. That is why this has to be different. So let me change this to be 2. Now let me again run this, right? So now since this is a unique value, 2 is not a duplicate. That is why we were able to insert this record. Now again, what I'll do is, let me add another record with the ID 2. So let's say now the name of the student is Annie. Now again, we get this warning message because ID number 2 is already present. So let me change this to 3. Now let me run this again, right? So now we are able to insert this record. So this unique constraint basically makes sure that there are no duplicate records inserted into this column. So now we have the next question. So again, we have this employee table with us, and we are supposed to find out the second highest salary from this table. So let's go to SQL Server and find out the solution. So let me start off by having a glance at the employee table. Select star from employee. Right, so this is our employee table over here, and we see that the highest salary is 159,000 and the second highest salary is 125,000. So we are supposed to extract this particular value from this data set. Now let's see how can we do this. So we can perform this operation with the help of subquery. Now let me just type in the command select, and since we want the maximum value, I'll use the max aggregate function, and this would be e salary. So I want the maximum salary from the name of the table is employee. I'll give in the where clause and given the condition where e salary is not in. After this, I will give in the subquery over here. So the subquery again would be the same. So select max of e salary from employee. So now if you have a glance at this, you would see that both of these queries are same. So select max of e salary from employee and select max of e salary from employee. Now this subquery would give in this result, which is 159,000. So and then this main query would make sure that this salary does not lie in this. So this would give us the 125,000 result. So select max of e salary from employee where e salary is not in 159,000. That would mean 125,000. So let me click on execute, right? So we have successfully got the result, which is 125,000. And this is how we can extract the second highest salary. So we have our next question over here. So what do you understand by normalization and denormalization? So this is a question which is very frequently asked during the interviews. So let's get to the answer. So normalization and denormalization are basically methods used in databases. And normalization is the process of reducing data redundancy and dependency by organizing fields and tables of the database. So it involves constructing tables and setting up relationships between those tables according to certain rules. And the redundancy and inconsistent dependency can be removed using these rules in order to make it more flexible. So I'm repeating it again, guys. So simply put, normalization is the process of reducing the data redundancy. And we are able to do this by organizing the fields and tables of the database. And then we have denormalization, which is a contrary process to normalization. So in denormalization, we basically add redundant data to speed up complex queries involving multiple table joins. So in denormalization, we attempt to optimize the read performance of a database by adding redundant data or by grouping the data. Right, so this is our next question. Now we are supposed to find out what exactly is wrong with the SQL query. So this is the SQL query over here. Select gender, average of age from employee where average age is greater than 30. And again, we are grouping this with respect to gender. So this is our employee table over here. Now let me go ahead and just type in the command, which would be select e gender. And then I would want the average of age. So average of e age from the name of the table is employee, where again the average of e age needs to be greater than 30, and this is being grouped with respect to gender. Now let me go ahead and click on execute. So let's see what is the error. So this warning message states that an aggregate may not appear in the where clause unless it is in a subquery contained in a having clause or a select list, and the column being aggregated is an outer reference. So this basically means that whenever we are working with aggregate functions and we are using group by, we can't use the where clause. So instead of the where clause, we would have to use the having clause. Now, let me change this to having and let me click on execute. So now again, we get an error over here, and this error says that incorrect syntax near the keyword group. And this is because if we are using the having clause, then group by would come first and having would come second. Now, let me cut this over here and let me paste this before having. Right. Now I'll click on execute. So this has to be gender over here. Now we've successfully got the result. So just to reiterate, the error was whenever we are working with aggregate functions, we cannot use the where clause and we would have to use the having clause. And if you are also using group by with having, then group by would come first and having would follow it. So next question. So what do you know about the stuff function? So the stuff function deletes a part of the string and then inserts another part into the string starting at a specified position. So this is the syntax of the stuff function. So stuff, this takes in these four parameters: string 1, position, length, and string 2. So this string 1 is basically that string which would be overwritten. Position would basically indicate the starting location for overwriting the string. And length is the length of the substitute string. And string 2 is that string which would overwrite the string. So again, let's go to SQL Server and work with an example with the stuff function. So now let's say I have this string which basically stands like this: SQL tutorial. Now I'd want to replace this SQL tutorial with Python tutorial, right? So for this purpose, we can actually use the stuff function. So let me go ahead and write the syntax for that. It would be select, I'll give in the function stuff. So let me start with the first parameter, which is the string which is to be replaced. So the string which is to be replaced is SQL tutorial, and then I'll give in the second argument, which is the position. So the position would be 1, that is I want to replace this, so this is position number 1, and then I would have to give in the length of the string which is substituted, right? So the length of SQL is 3. I'll just type in 3 over here, and then finally I will give in string 2, which is basically that string which would replace this over here. So I would type in Python over here. Now I'll execute. So initially our string was SQL tutorial, and with the help of the stuff function, you were able to change this from SQL tutorial to Python tutorial. So next up, we'd have to explain about views in SQL. So what exactly is a view? And then we'd have to give an example of view. So you can consider views as virtual tables which are used to limit the information that we want to display. And these are actually nothing but the result of an SQL statement which have a name associated with them. And since views are not virtually present, it takes less space to store. So let's take this example. From this employee table, let's say we wanted to perform multiple operations on the records where the gender is female. So we can create a view only for the female employees from the entire employee table. So let's go ahead and perform this in SQL Server. Now let me type the syntax for this. So I would want to create a view which would comprise of only the female employees from the entire employee table. Now let me just have a glance at the employee table first. So select star from employee. Now I would want a view which would comprise of just these two records. Now let me go ahead and write in the syntax for the view. So it'd be create view, and the name of the view would be female employee. And after this, I will give in the keyword AS. After that, I'll type in select, and then I'll give in the condition. So select star from employee, where after the where clause, I will give in the condition which actually matters. So gender needs to be equal to female. Right, so I have successfully created this view with the name female employee, which would comprise of only the records of the female employees. Now, let me delete this and let me have a glance at the view which I've just created. So select star from female employee. Right, so this is our view which comprises of these two records, and the names of the employees are Anne and Julia. Now similarly, let's say if I wanted a view which would comprise of only those employees whose age is greater than 25. So let me go ahead and write the syntax for that. So create view, and then let's say the name of the view is H, and then I'll type in the keyword AS, select. Now over here, let me give in the statement. So select star from employee where, and then the condition would be age needs to be greater than 25. So we have created this view. Now let me have a glance at this. So select star from age. Right? So this is a view which would comprise of only those records where the age of the employee is greater than 25. And we've got 4 records over here. So Sam's age is 45, Julia's age is 30, Matt's age is 33, and Jeff's age is 27. Right, so what is a stored procedure? And then we'll have to give an example of stored procedure. So a stored procedure is a prepared SQL code which can be saved and reused. Or in other words, you can consider a stored procedure to be a function consisting of many SQL statements to access the database system. So we can consolidate several SQL statements into a stored procedure and execute them whenever and wherever required. And stored procedure can be used as a means of modular programming. That is, you can create a stored procedure once, store, and call for several times whenever required. So this supports faster execution when compared to executing multiple queries. Now let's look at the syntax of a stored procedure. So we'll give in the keywords create procedure, and then we'll give the procedure name over here. After that, we will give in the keyword as, and then we'll give the SQL statement for which we'd want to create the procedure. And then we'll end the procedure with the go keyword. Now, after we create a procedure, we need to execute it. So this is the syntax to execute the procedure. So we'll type in exec and then give the name of the procedure which is to be executed. Right, so again, let's have an example with the stored procedure. So now I'm going to create a stored procedure which would help me to extract the age of the employees in a very easy way. So let me type in the syntax for that. Create procedure, and then I'll give in the name of the procedure. So this would be employee age. After this, I will type in the keyword ES, and then I'll give in the select statement. So select age from employee. Now that this is done, I'll give in the go keyword. Right. So now I've successfully created this stored procedure with the name employee age. Now I'll go ahead and execute this. So it'll be exec or execute employee age. Right. So we have created the stored procedure which would help me to easily access the age column from this employee table. So next question. What do you understand about join, and explain about different joins? So a join clause is used to combine rows from 2 or more tables based on a related column between them. So there are various types of joins which can be used to retrieve data, and it depends on the relationship between tables. So first we have inner join, which basically returns records that have matching values in both the tables. Then we have left join. So left join returns rows which are common between the tables and all rows of the left hand side table. That is, it returns all the rows from the left hand side table even though there are no matches in the right hand side table. Then we have right join. So right join returns rows which are common between the tables and all the rows of the right hand side table. That is, it returns all the rows from the right hand side table even though there are no matches in the left hand side of the table. And finally we have the full join. So full join returns all rows from the left hand side table and all the rows from the right hand side table. So now we'll have to explain about inner join properly. So the inner join basically gives us those records which have matching values in both the tables. So we've already learned this. Now let's say we have two tables, table A and table B. And when we apply inner join on these two tables, we'll get only those records which are common to both table A and table B. So this gray portion which you see over here, so this would be the result of the inner join. Now let's look at the syntax of inner join. So we'll give the keyword select, and then we'll give in the list of the columns, following which we'll give the from keyword, and then we'll give the name of the first table. Then we'll use the keywords inner, join, and then give the name of the second table. After which we'll give in the on keyword. So this on keyword tells SQL that this inner join needs to be done on some condition. And the condition over here states that the values from column X of table 1 should be equal to the values of column Y from table 2. So let me just retrieve this. The values of column X from table 1 should be equal to the values of column Y from table 2. Now let's go to SQL Server and work with this inner join. So I have two tables over here. So the first table would be the employee table and the second table would be the department table. So let me have a glance at both of the tables. So select star from employee. Now the second command would be select star from department. So this is the employee table over here, which we've already seen, and then we have this department table. Now I'd want to have an inner join on both of these tables where the EDEPT column from this table is equal to the DNAME column from this table. That is, wherever the values from these two columns match, I'd want only those records. Now let me go ahead and write the syntax for this. So I will type in select and then I'll give in all of the columns which I want. So I want the e-name column and e-department column from the employee table. So this would be employee dot e-name. Then I would want employee dot e-department. After that, I would want the department name and the department location from the department table. So I'll type in department dot dname, and then I also want department dot d location. Right, so these are all of the columns which I want from both the tables. Now after this, I'll type in from, and then I will type in the name of the first table, which is employee, and then I'll just type in inner join, and then given the name of the second table, which would be department. Then I'll give in the on keyword and then given the condition. So here the condition is the values of the dname column should be equal to the values of the EDEPT column. So employee dot e-name should be equal to department dot dname. Now I'll execute this. Right, so this is the result. So we have our employee table over here. This is the department table. And finally, this is the result of the inner join. So here we see that we've got only those records where the departments match in both of the tables. So the matched departments are support, analytics, and sales, right? So we've got support, analytics, and sales from over here because only those departments are present in this department column. So next question. Well, what do you understand about temporary table? And then we'd have to write a query to create a temporary table. So simply put, temporary tables basically help us to store and process the intermediate results. Now these temporary tables are created in the tempdb and are automatically deleted when they are no longer used. So the temporary tables could be very useful in cases where we need to store temporary data. Now let's look at the syntax of a temporary table. So first we will give in the keywords create table, and before we go ahead and give the name of the temporary table, we'll have to precede it with a hash. So again, let's go ahead and create a temporary table. So now what I'll do is I'll create a temporary table and I will name this as, let's say, book. And then before the name of the table, I'd have to precede it with a hash. Right, now this would have two columns. So first would be the book ID, and this would be of integer type, and then this would have book cost, which is again of integer type. Now let me execute this. Now I'll refresh over here. I'll click on the plus sign. I'll go into system databases and I'll go into tempdb. And over here, let me click on the temporary table. So we see that we have successfully created this temporary table with the name book. Now let me see what is present in this table. So I'll type in select star from. I'll put in the hash symbol over here and then I'll give in book. Right, so as of now, this temporary table is empty. Now let me go ahead and insert something into this table. So the command would pretty much be the same. So insert into, and then lb book. I'll type in values over here. So the only difference which you see when you're creating or working with a temporary table and the normal tables is you'd have to precede the name of the table with a hash. So as simple as that. Rest everything would be the same. And over here, let me give in the values. So the book ID is 1 and the book cost is 100. Right. Now let me also add another record. So the second ID would be 2, and now the book cost would be, let's say, 232. All right. Now let me have a glance at this modified temporary table. So select star from hash book. Right, so we have added 2 records into this temporary table. So now we'd have to explain the difference between OLTP and OLAP. So let's start with OLTP. So OLTP basically stands for Online Transaction Processing, and you can consider it to be a class of software applications capable of supporting transaction-oriented programs. And an important attribute of an OLTP system is its ability to maintain concurrency. So OLTP systems often follow a decentralized architecture to avoid single points of failure. And these systems are generally designed for a large audience of end users who conduct short transactions. And queries involved in such databases are generally simple, need fast response times, and return relatively few records. So the number of transactions per second acts as an effective measure for such systems. Then we have OLAP. So OLAP stands for Online Analytical Processing, and it is a class of software programs which are characterized by relatively low frequency of online transactions. So queries are often too complex and involve a bunch of aggregations. And for OLAP systems, the effectiveness measure relies highly on response time. So such systems are widely used for data mining or maintaining aggregated historical data, and this is usually used in multi-dimensional schemas. So then we have the next question. So what is the difference between the delete and the truncate command? So again, keep this in mind, guys. This is a question which is very frequently asked in interviews. So let's start off with the delete query. So the delete query is used to delete or remove one or more existing tables. So let's have a look at the syntax. So we'll start with the delete keyword, and then we'll put in the keyword from. Then we'll specify the name of the table. After that, we'll specify the where condition, but then that's optional. So let's see an example of this delete command. So we have this table. So the name of the table is STU, which basically is the student table. Now from this table, I'd want to delete the record where the name of the student is Bob. So let me write the syntax for that. So delete from, and then I'd have to give in the name of the table. So the name of the table is STU. So delete from STU. After that, I'll give in the where clause and give the condition where S name is equal to Bob. Let me execute this. Right. So we have successfully deleted that record from this table where the name of the student was Bob. So similarly, let's say if I want to delete that record where the student ID is 3. Right, so over here the condition would change. So delete from STU where SID equals 3. So now this time we have deleted that record where the student ID was equal to 3. Now let's look at the truncate statement. So the truncate statement deletes all of the data inside the table. So here we'll give in the keywords truncate table and then give the name of the table. So let's go to SQL Server and work with this truncate command. So now we have this stu1 table. So let me go ahead and use the truncate command of this table. So I'll type in truncate and then I'll give in the name of the table, which would be stu1. So before that, I'd have to type in table. So truncate table stu1. Let me run this. Right, so we have deleted all of the records from this table. Right, so this is how the truncate command works. Now let's understand some differences between the delete command and the truncate command. So when it comes to the type of language, truncate would be a DDL command or a data definition language command, and delete is a DML command or a data manipulation command. Now another difference would be we can't really execute a trigger in case of truncate, while with delete we can accomplish a trigger. Now also, if a table is referenced by any foreign key constraints, then truncate won't work. So if you have a foreign key, then you'd have to use delete and you wouldn't be able to use the truncate command. So next question. What is the difference between union and union all operators? So the union operator is used to combine the result set of 2 or more select statements. For example, if the first select statement returns these 3 fish and the second select statement returns these 3 fish, then the union operator would return the result of these 2 select statements. And if there is a record which is present in both the tables, will get only one of them in the final result. So here we see that this blue fish is present in both the tables A and B. Now, when we apply the union operator on these two tables, the final result of A union B would have only one of these blue fish. And this is the syntax of the union operator. So we'll give the first select statement. After that, we'll give in the union operator, following which we'll give the second select statement. Now you also need to keep in mind that the number and the order of columns must be same in both the select queries. So let's work with this union operator now. So we have these two tables over here. So the name of this table is student details 1 and the name of this table is student details 2. And if we have a glance at the columns, we see that both of the tables have 3 columns and the names of the columns are same and also the order of the columns are same. So here we have SID, SNAME and SMarks. Similarly over here we have SID, SNAME and SMarks. Now let's go ahead and apply the union operator on this. So I'll type in the first select statement. So it'll be select star from student details 1. So let me change the spelling to student details. After this, I will apply the union operator and then give in the second select statement. So select star from student details 2. Now let me click on execute. So this is the result over here. Now let me also print in the first two original tables. So select star from student details 1 and then I'll also put in select star from student details 2. So let me just change the spelling to student over here. Let me also change this over here. So this will be student. Right. So this is student details 1, this is student details 2, and this is the result of the union operator. Now, if you have a glance at these two tables, then you see that these two records are repeating over here, right? So there's Anne, Julia over here in the first table, and there's also Anne and Julia in the second table. Now, when we apply the union operator, then we'll just have one record coming from each of these tables, right? So we've got Anne over here, we've got Julia over here. And then we finally have Matt, which comes from the second table. This is how the union operator works. Right, now let's look at the union all operator. So the union all operator gives all the records from both the tables, including the duplicates as well. So here, since this blue fish is present in both the tables A and B, the final result of A union all B would also have the duplicate value. So here we see that we've got both of the blue fish from table A and table B. Now let's go ahead and implement this in SQL Server as well. So here we have these two tables already ready, which are student details 1 and student details 2. Now what I'll do is I will copy this, I'll paste this over here and just type in union all. So union all, I'll click on execute. So student details 1, student details 2. Let me just expand this over here. Right, and this is the result of union all operator, right? So if you have a glance at this, you'll see that these two are repeating, so we would have duplicate values. So we've got Anne twice over here and also Julia twice over here. So next question, well, what is the use of the intersect operator? So the intersect operator helps to combine two select statements and returns only those records which are common to both the select statements, right? So if we've got table A and table B over here, and if we apply the intersect operator on these two tables, then we'll get only those records which are common to the result of the select statements of these two. Now let's look at the syntax. So over here, this is the syntax. So we'll start off by giving the first select statement and then we'll give the intersect operator, following which we'll give the second select statement. Now let's see an example on this. So again, we have these two tables over here, student details 1 and student details 2. Now let me apply the intersect operator on these two. So let me just type in intersect over here and I click on execute. Now let me maximize this over here, right? So student details 1, student details 2, and this is the result of the intersect operator. So we see that since Anne and Julia are common to both of these tables, this is the resultant of the select statement, right? So the select statement on the first table gives out Anne and Julia, and the select statement from the second table also gives out Anne and Julia. So the intersection of these two would be this. So we have our final question. Now let's say you're given a table Now you'd have to copy the data of this table into another table. So you have this employee table. Now you'd have to go ahead and copy the data which is present in all of this table into another table. So let's see how can we do this. So this is our employee table over here. Now we'd have to copy all of this into another table. So for this purpose, we can use the insert into select operator. Now before we go ahead and do that, we would also have to create another table which would have the same structure as this table. So if the table doesn't have the same structure, then you wouldn't be able to copy the data. So let me go ahead and create the table first. So I'll type in create table and I'll name this as employee duplicate. And then I'll give in all of the values over here. So my first column would be EID and this would be of integer type. Second column would be ename and this would be of varchar type. And the length of the string would be 20. And then I would have the eSalary over here. This would be of integer again. After this, I would have the E8, which is of integer. Then I would have the gender of the employee. So the gender of the employee would again be of character type. Now I'd have to make sure that I give in commas after all of these. So let me just put in a comma after this as well. And then the final column would be EDEPT. And this again would be of variable character of length 20. Right. So I've successfully created this employee duplicate table. Select star from employee duplicate. Right. So as of now, we see that this table is empty. Now I'd want to copy all of the table present in the employee table into this table. So let me write in the command for that. So I will start off by giving the keywords insert into. Now after that, I'll give in the name of the table into which I want to insert. So the name of the table would be employee duplicate. Then I will type in select star from, and then I would have to give in the name of the original table. So the name of the original table would be employee. Right? So 6 rows have been affected. Now let me have a glance at the new table, which would be select star from employee duplicate. Right? So we have successfully copied all of the data which was present in employee table into this employee duplicate table. Right guys, so this also brings us to the end of this session. And I hope that this session on SQL interview questions was very helpful to you.
So guys, this brings us to the end of the session. Do stay tuned to Intellipaat's YouTube channel for more such informative content.